morning, friends. Welcome back to Wit Family Fit. Today we have a special video coming your way. It's a topic that we have talked about some, but we haven't done a formal video in a long time with our story, so we're going to share it. Babe, why is today special?
So on this day, 2 years ago, we adopted Brenner. He was our first foster placement. We started foster care, 4.5 years ago, something like that.
Yep.
And it was a long, drawn-out process with him, but that's what kind of started our foster care journey.
Yeah, absolutely. So for those of you that are new to our channel, Brent and I are both health coaches, but we are also both foster parents, and foster care has been a huge part of our life. We do have 3 biological children, and we have 1 adopted child, and then for the last several years we've usually had an infant foster placement. However, we have been without a placement for the last month because our last little bug went home in middle of June. So I figured we'd kind of just share a little bit of our heart and how we got started in foster care, and just a little bit of our journey as we kind of just recognize both the brokenness and the beauty that come with adoption and foster care, and sort of just share some of like our heart and our feelings on the topic.
So we always knew we wanted a big family. You know, Abby comes from a family of 4 kids. I come from a family of 3 kids. I think she originally wanted 5. I wanted 3, so we settled on 4. And as we started having our own biological kids, Abby's pregnancies were pretty rough, and they were tough on her and on the babies. And so after her doctor got us through 3 successful pregnancies and had 3 now pretty healthy, generally healthy kids.
Dr. Hunt's the best doctor in the world.
He kind of told us that if we continue to do this, it's going to be very, very dangerous for Abby and for the baby.
He was worried we'd be looking at, a 20-week type situation. I was on bed rest a lot, and I loved being pregnant. I still miss it every day. But I am grateful for what we went through with our biological children, because I think in hindsight, it's always 2020. God was preparing our hearts and leading us to this path long before we ever realized it. And I can say, foster care was something that was always kind of on our heart, even very young in our dating relationship. We went to a school in Seward, Nebraska at Concordia University, and we were a member of a church out there. And that church had a foster family, and I just remember Brent and I would sit there on Sunday mornings and see them walk in with a different variety of kids. It seemed like every week. Their specialty was like age 2 and under, and we actually got to work with their older biological children in youth group, and we just saw what compassionate hearts they had, and how it just positively impacted those teenagers to learn the empathy and be the hands and feet of Jesus. And it made a lasting impression on us. So I can vividly remember conversations when we would see that family in church that Brent and I would have, like, hey, one day when our kids are in high school, we want to be foster parents. Like that, wouldn't you say that's kind of where it started?
Yeah, I guess that was probably where the bug was initially implanted. But
it was never like, oh, let's do this early on in our marriage, or like to build our family. That was not kind of in our heads. So fast forward, not that far, because we had our babies pretty early on in our marriage. Like, I got pregnant like 2 months into our marriage, but that's neither here nor there. We wouldn't change it for a thing. We've had our share of challenges, but we love what God has done through our family. So we started, it would have been like in 2017 that we started the process to become foster parents. And basically it was one of those things where we, you finish the story, what you were saying. Dr. Hunt said, no more pregnancies, and then pick up from there.
So we always knew we were going to have a big family, like I was saying earlier. And so after Grayson was born, we kind of was going through the newborn stuff, and then it kind of got to that point where it was like, well, this is typically where we start
trying for another baby.
Yeah. But obviously that wasn't going to happen. So then we like, okay, well, there's a lot of babies that are born that need homes. So we were like, okay, well, let's look at adoption. So we looked at private adoption, and we knew on 2 teacher salaries that there's no way that was going to be feasible. So from a financial standpoint, and so then we kind of tabled it for a little while, and then I just remember it seemed like one day we were just sitting at the table, and it was just almost like it popped into our head about the same time.
We just looked at each other and we're like, well, what about foster care? Like, we have love to give. I remember vividly, those moments in your life that are like defining moments. I remember sitting in the hospital. Grayson was born like 4 weeks early, 5 weeks early, something. I think 5 weeks. He was 35 weeks, and we were sitting down in labor and delivery. And my doctor came in and he put his hand on my knee, and we were talking about our options. And he was like, "Look, I really think, a tubal ligation is the best thing for you. We prayed about it, we talked about it, and I remember looking at Brenton and saying, I will only consent to this if you promise me that 6 months or a year, however long down the road, that I don't feel our family is complete, you will consider adoption. And he was like, absolutely, 100%. Like, that was never anything that we disagreed on. So I remember that, and then I remember going through like a grieving process for sure. I mean, I grieved hard for probably 6 months to a year following that tubal, because I knew being a mom was like what I was meant to do. And
she's one of the weird ladies that enjoyed pregnancy.
I loved pregnancy.
Even though they were hard on her, she loved it.
Like, I wouldn't be mad. I love pregnancy. Oh my gosh, I love it so much. It was hard, but I loved it. Something about feeling that baby move inside of you. But I also can tell you, and I know that this is kind of a rabbit trail of a different whatever, but I always worried that what if I can't love my adopted kids as much as my biological kids? And I can tell you that is not even a thing. It's the same way how I remember when Braxton was born, I was like, how can I love another baby as much as I love him? He's my baby. And then your love just multiplies and grows. And I think both of us have had the same response. Like, even on our foster babies, even the babies that we have not adopted that have gone home, the moment that caseworker walks in and puts that baby in your arms, it's like an instant miraculous, like, honestly, I think it's the closest thing to a miracle I've ever seen, like, on earth. God just opens your heart, and that is your baby, and it's the same feeling as putting that baby on your chest after delivery. Would you agree? Mm-hmm. I mean, it really is. And so I've
never delivered a baby.
You've never delivered a baby, but you've held a baby in the C-section room, yes. Right? So that was a rabbit trail, but for those of you that are like considering adoption or foster care or whatever and wondering if you have the capacity to love, well, I'm going to tell you this. As a human, mom and dad, you don't. But as a child of God who just grows that love in your heart through him and by his grace, you do have the capacity to do it. Like, and I'm not saying it's not hard, because it's hard, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But so we got Brenner, our first placement. He was in foster care for 789 days, and we adopted him 2 years ago today. We have had 4 other babies.
I'm sure there was a 4 or 5.
I think it's 5 total, including him. Okay. Because we had 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, we've had 5 total foster babies in the course of 4.5 years. One of whom is adopted. That's Brenner. And we have fingers crossed for a little girl. Ainsley wants a sister, but we're open. You know, when you get pregnant, you don't get to choose the gender, so we sort of go with that same vibe in foster care. We generally try not to choose genders too much, but our hearts would be open to either. But we have a special place for a little girl, I think. Anyways, so celebratory day. We are just so thrilled to be adoptive parents, and like I said, it's not all easy. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
The hardest part about the foster care system is knowing, I don't know how to say it delicately, what is good or good enough.
Right. So
like I said, the balance that they try to find.
I think we need to put out a disclaimer here that everything, like, foster care comes from brokenness, yes. Right? It comes from sinful, broken families, and it's tragic. And foster care is the best option to keep those babies safe. And of course, we as foster parents, our job is to support reunification and to make every attempt to, walk along these children and care for them in the gap, knowing that they are, while God grants them to us for a time, they are not ours forever, always. Now, Brenner is ours forever, always, and we praise God for his faithfulness in that story and his redemptiveness in that story. And we 100%, we have walked through one beautiful reunification in particular, where our foster son that we raised from birth till 10 months went home and is with his family, and we still have a great relationship. We get to see him, and that's just the most beautiful redemptiveness that you could expect to come out of foster care. However, it's not always like that. And, without going into too many details, there's a lot of times where things in foster care happen where you were saying you can pick up on the good or good enough situation.
So there's, even within foster families, you'll hear horror stories about foster families that are in it for the money because of all the money they pay you, right?
Not that much.
So it works both ways. But, for people like us who we love these kids. That's what we do. We love kids. And
I think anyone would say
we treat them like our own.
They're our own.
The second they enter our home.
Yeah, anyone would tell you that has been around us will say we love unashamedly, we love big, we love imperfectly because we're humans, of course. But those babies are nothing less than our own when they're in our house.
And it's really tough to know, just like, because you wouldn't send your own kid in a situation that you knew was not up to your standard. When one of your placements gets reunified and they're going to a situation,
or moved to a different home,
and they're going into a situation that would not provide them for the same not level of care, environment.
Well, and it's hard too
that you would provide.
Right. They won't be raised the same way as you were going to raise them. And that's just something going into foster care you have to be okay with, because if there's anything we learned as foster parents, it's that we truthfully don't have a say and have no control over anything. And that's just part of the job. And I will tell you, we strongly considered, after our last placement left, quitting. Like, truthfully.
Yep.
I think it's fair to be honest about that, because I think it's important to be honest about like the ups and downs of this journey. I don't think we'd ever considered quitting prior to this last placement.
So, and it really stems from our last two, the way that they were, the reunification process for them
was very tumultuous, very quick, very abrupt, very lacking
in communication.
And it was just a very...
We were led to believe one thing, and then at the last, within a week of it happening, it completely 180'd.
Right. And it's like,
so we kind of prepared our hearts and kind of got our minds going for the path that we were told was going to take. So we were kind of wrapping our minds around what that's going to look like, and then all of a sudden it...
And to be honest, I'm just going to be honest, we were wrapping our minds around a possible forever. And so to then have it be so flipped,
and so fast.
I feel like I could relate it to when people have matched adoptions where they meet the baby and they think they're theirs, and then they change their mind. That's kind of how I felt about this. And that's not to say it's anyone's fault, guys. This is what we said, it comes from brokenness. It's a broken system, and it's a challenging system to work within by no fault of the mostly amazing humans who we work with in the child welfare system. It's a lot of most of the individuals really do care. Yep. There's some that seemingly don't, but it's really just a lot of politics by the state and a lot of decisions made by politicians who aren't living the daily life that we as foster parents and bio families and foster children live. And so those of you who are like, I'm not called to be an adoptive parent, I'm not called to be a foster parent, all of you can support the child welfare system and these families in prayer, because it is a challenging thing to do. We're very passionate about that, and we're also very passionate about, if you're not a foster, not everyone is called to this ministry. Like, we are called to this ministry.
It's not an easy ministry to be involved in.
It's not an easy ministry to be involved in, and people don't understand it, because honestly, we're choosing hard, like, on purpose, and that sort of goes against the American ideal. Like, why would you choose to bring trauma and brokenness into your family willingly? And we're not tooting our own horns by any means, and we do it so imperfectly. We do the best we can, but by God's grace, this is what He's called us to. But I do encourage you, like, in your church, if there's a foster care ministry, support it. If there are, whether it's, diaper closets or your clothes from your kids that they outgrow, giving them to foster families, or providing a meal train for the first couple nights of a new placement, respite providers. In our local community, we are so short on respite providers. I don't have a lot of people I could call that are foster certified to help us if we needed to go out of town suddenly or whatever. So those are all ways that you could help serve in that way. And all of you can serve in prayer to really just come behind adoptive and foster parents, because even once an adoption happens, it's not all rainbows and unicorns. Like, there's still trauma. Even these little babies, even if you got them at birth, they're still
it's amazing what trauma can happen
in utero
the womb,
trauma,
substance
abuse, and whatever else, domestic violence, any of these other reasons that children get brought into the child welfare system to begin with.
Kind of manifests itself as they grow up, and it's kind of crazy what can rear its head at any time.
And it seems like in the last 4.5 years, the foster care has become less and less taboo, and that more people talk about it. Because I remember when we started, it was sort of like a little taboo.
They didn't know anybody else.
Yeah, we didn't know anyone that were foster parents, and
we also didn't know any kids that had been in the foster care system, which now is crazy to think.
which is amazing actually, because we have in our small little town, we have a pretty strong foster and adoptive presence, and it's
Yes,
cool
we
because
do.
Brenner literally has 3 kids in his class, a very close family, friends, or within his little grade level that are all adopted, and it's so cool that that's just normal, and we love that that's being normalized. And I know this has been really rambly, but I think we just wanted to share our hearts a little bit. Hold on, buddy. I think we just wanted to share our hearts a little bit.
He's asking who they are.
What? We can't say it on YouTube. What? Yes. So we're just really blessed that we are able to raise him in a community and with friends who are walking the same journey, sharing the same struggles, sharing the same joys. So we're blessed by you guys. You know who you are. What do you want to say in closing? What would you want people to know about this? Or, I mean, I don't know. Just close it up.
You don't have to understand why foster parents do what they do or why they make the choices they make regarding who comes in their home at any given point. But you can, like I was saying, give them support. Just say thank you. If you don't agree with it, that is totally your right, and you do not have to understand why we do it. But it is important for those of us that do this ministry, that follow through with this, that support and that love can go a long way.
I have to say, one of the main reasons, honestly, that we didn't quit after our little bug left was because you guys on social media had so many kind things to say.
Mm-hmm.
Wouldn't you say that was a huge factor?
Resonated.
I mean, we were ready to throw in the towel, and we just had a post that we made about him leaving our home, and you guys just poured out love and support and kindness, and that is just...
We can't thank you enough.
We can't thank you enough, because I feel like it really truthfully has changed the course of our foster and adoption journey, because you kept encouraging us when we needed it most, because it's been a rough 6 weeks for our family, as far as emotionally grieving like what has happened over the last year. So today we are celebrating Brenner, and we are celebrating the fact that God has called us into this ministry. And if you've hung on to the video this long, thank you for watching. But we thought some of you might be interested in our story and our journey, and so we wanted to share. Have a great weekend, guys.